Hello everyone and welcome back to Game 6 of the Women's World Chess Championship match between the challenger Zhongyi and the champion Wenjun. And it's been a pretty awesome match so far. So we had a draw in Game 1, then Tan took the lead, winning Game 2, then Wenjun retaliated in Game 3. Game 4 ended in a draw, and then again the champion won in Game 5. So now this is the last game being played in the Wenjun's hometown of Shanghai. So of course Zhongyi would very much love to retaliate before going back to Chongqing, her hometown, where the match will be continued. So as we've said, 6 games here, 6 games there. So yeah, that is the plan. She has the white pieces, and of course she would like to equalize. And regarding the strategy in the match so far, we've seen three Sicilian defenses, and we've seen 2 English openings. Will it be in English again? Let's check it out. So Game 6, like I said, Game 6 in every World Chess Championship match has a very special place, because the game is just always a little bit more special than the other games. There's either, something grand happens, or there's a, big upset in the match or something. So of course we always hope for that. But without spoiling too much, let's check it out. Tan has the white pieces, and she opens with pawn to c4. Again, she opts for the English opening, and we have knight to f6. This is what Wenjun did in both games where the English was played. However, in the 2 games where English was played, knight to c3 was played. But here, Zhongyi opens with knight to f3. So she deviates from knight to c3 line. And okay, now we see what the champion has prepared. We have pawn to e6, and now knight to c3 and the g3 are the 2 most common approaches. Here we have pawn to b3, which means that she will not only fianchetto her light square bishop, but also her dark square bishop. And since we're still in the opening, we can also check out the nice photo before the game. There's the handshake, as usual, no eye contact, nothing out of the ordinary here. There we can see, I think, only 1 beverage on the table by the challenger. Again, we don't know what it is. I imagine it's not coffee. I don't know, it'd be maybe too stressing to drink coffee during a World Chess Championship match, but you never know. Could be anything. Okay, so pawn to b3 and pawn to d5. The Agincourt defense is on the board, now completed. Bishop to b2 and pawn to c5. We have c captures on d5, e captures, and pawn to g3. So the early fianchetto of both bishops, knight to c6 and bishop to g2. We have pawn to d4. If white doesn't want the center, of course black will claim it. Castles and bishop to e7. We have knight to a3 as c3 has been occupied by the pawn, not occupied by being controlled by the pawn, and the knight will now shift either to c4 or to b5 or to c2, depending on what black plays. Usually the knight comes to c4, and here we have castles king side, and the position has been reached quite a few times in top level chess. For example, Anish Giri had it against Ding Liren, Caruana had it against Pregnananda, Wesley So had it against Levon Aronian, Maksudlu had it against Navara, Vincent Keimer had it against Rasmus Svane. So many games with this exact same position, and knight to c4 is the most common approach. Pawn to e3 also very much played. This is the second move. So you either go knight to c4 here or pawn to e3. This has all been thoroughly analyzed, and we have d captures on e3, d captures on e3, and now bishop to f5. So the first move where some time was actually spent. Okay, so maybe some few minutes were spent on the opening moves, but this is the one where time was really spent. And there is a game, a very famous one in 2023 in the Global Chess League. Vishwanathan Anand defeated Yang Krzysztof Duda from this position. Duda went for the immediate knight to the c4, which is the top engine move. Knight c4 is the top engine move, knight to e5 is the second move recommended by the engine. Queen captures on d8, of course, can be played. It can always be played as the queens are staring at each other, and it's not like you're giving up the d file. Both rooks will come to the d file, everything gets traded off, and that would be pretty much it for this game. But here we have knight to e5, and it is now, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game. So let's see what the champion does. Knight captures on e5, played pretty much instantly, as it's hard to make out a move without capturing this knight. Knight captures on c6 looks just too strong to allow that. To defend with queen to c7 is possible, but still after captures you will have to mess up your pawn structure. So capturing on e5 is what makes the most sense. So captures, captures, and now we have queen to c8. With some ideas of... well, the main idea is obviously bishop to h3, but if white goes knight to c4 now, which is kind of white's plan the entire game, then you kind of run into trouble. After rook d8, the queen has to move somewhere, and then you strike with pawn to b5. And once the knight moves, or you even capture the rook, there's really not a good reply here. Probably pawn to e4 and then just bishop to h3, but then black is very, very happy with his pawn structure. And of course, if you capture the rook, then you can resign because the knight is hanging, and also bishop to h3 is coming, mate threats. You will have to give up the rook on f1. This would be resigns time. So after queen c8, we have queen to e2. Just developing, connecting rooks, also gaining more control over that c4 square, but also over the b5 square. And here we have bishop to h3. And you could go for something like bishop captures on h3, but the problem with this captures is that once black recaptures, you also have to capture the knight. If you don't do that, the knight is coming to g4, and you're getting checkmated. Or okay, maybe you can play something like f3, but the knight on g4 would also attack the undefended bishop on e5, so you would have to resign. So you'd have to capture on f6, captures, captures, and something like rook ad1, rook ad8, and okay, we call it a day. That's what would happen. So after bishop to h3, of course, Tan still wants to make as much of this game as possible. She does have the white pieces. She wants to equalize before taking the match to her hometown. And bishop captures on g2. Played pretty much instantly. King captures. We have queen to e6 and bishop back to b2. We have knight to e4 and now rook f to d1. We have rook a to d8. Offering a rook trade, and only now knight to c4. Maybe the knight can be played somewhat differently, but it doesn't seem all that harmful to allow pawn to b5. That is exactly what Wenjun does. We have b5, knight to e5, and now look at this, pawn to f5. You also have to defend this knight, and the only good move for white is to remaneuver the queen via queen to e2. And the point is that it comes with tempo. You would have to burn a move with playing pawn to a6, and then you would nicely consolidate. But here we have knight to d3. And this is a problem, but maybe it's not that easy to spot why. Feel free to pause the video and try to exploit this position while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this very nice idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is not pawn to c4. Pawn to c4 is fine, but pawn to g5 is the move you want to play. The reason c4 doesn't work right away is because a very specific move, that is knight f4, you attack the queen, and now once the queen is ready to advance the pawn to c3, you will play knight e2, and you gain control over the c3 square, and there's no way to push it. It seems like you can push it, but not really, because knight captures, and once you capture with the knight, then of course you blunder your queen on c6. So after knight to d3, pawn to g5, by far the best, we have knight to e1, and now is the time to advance the pawn to c4. And it's a pretty crazy line that is most likely leading to a win, but it wasn't played in the game. I will show it because it's not very easy to find. Captures, captures, and now rook ac1, g4, and now after queen e2 you have to play queen to c6. Threaten all sorts of nasty discoveries, and there is nothing better than to capture on c4, and once the queen moves, now you capture on e4, because if you allow discoveries, you're just gonna get destroyed here. So you're gonna have to capture, and after, well, queen captures obviously with check, king g1. Now you can maybe hope in saving this game, but it doesn't look very likely. You only have a pawn for the exchange, so it doesn't seem like you'll be able to do it. So after knight e1, we have bishop to f6, and now Tan quickly goes back into the game. We have captures, queen captures. Sorry about that, I think I'm coming down with something. We have rook captures on d8, rook captures on d8, and now rook to d1. We have rook captures and queen captures. We have queen to d6, offering a queen trade, and while you could trade, queen to h5 is what Tan opts for. We have queen to h5, king to g7, and queen to e8. And it doesn't seem like there's all that much you can do here. the white queen has enough, opportunities and squares to go for some sort of perpetual if black activates too much. And also from e8, you are controlling c6. Queen to c6 cannot be allowed. We have pawn to a6, also b5 was hanging. So knight f3, we have knight to f6, and now queen to a8. Still guarding that c6 square. Pawn to h6, and now you have to continue with something like knight e1, allow the creation of the passed pawn, and okay, you play against that. Objectively, it can be played. However, here Tan went a little bit too hard. She played pawn to h4, and now pawn to g4. Pawn to g4 was never really a threat because you could play knight h4. With the pawn on h4, not so much. Here we have queen b7 check, and now the question is, what do you play here? That is the question. What do you play to have the best chances of winning the game? The move you have to play is queen d7. Just to give you an example, if you play king to g8, then okay, you can still go into an endgame, but after something like queen e6 check, queen f7, and queen to c8 check, you can play this, you can play queen to e8, but now after captures and captures, there's knight e5, and the white is actually okay here. By forcing a trade with queen to d7, here the problem is the knight will have control over the e5 square, and not capturing, well, you're just going to lose a knight. So queen captures on d7, knight captures, we have knight to d2 as e5 is now covered by the knight on d7, and king f6, and this is now a much better endgame for black. And with f3, maybe you can still fight. After pawn to f4, the game is now objectively winning for Wenjun. We have king to e6, pawn to e4, f captures, knight captures, and king to d5. The black king is just much more active here. Knight f2 going after the pawn, and even knight f6. Still waiting with the pawn to h5 push. King to f1, king d4, grabbing more space. King e2, we have pawn to h5. Now the knight can again be activated. Pawn to a4, and king c3. We have captures, and knight to d3 going after c5, but just knight e4, defending and attacking on g3. We have king e3, and now, well, you could play pawn to c4 first, and then only after the knight is kicked away, capture on g3. This is one way to do it, but Wenjun goes for knight captures on g3, giving up the c5 pawn, but she will also capture on h4 once knight f5 check is played. So knight captures on c5, we have knight to f5 with check, king e4, and knight captures on h4. King to e5, we have king to b4 attacking the knight and winning yet another pawn. Knight to e4 and king captures on b3. We have king to f6 and now knight f3, even stopping the king from going to e5 or g5. And well, while it's on the f file, you can't really start advancing that pawn. And that is pretty much it. f5, h4, we have king to e7 and now pawn to g3. Pawn to f6, pawn to g2, and he was in this position on move 52 that the challenger Tan Zhongyi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once you play another move, for example, pawn to f7, you can even go knight to e5, and that pawn is lost, and you cannot stop this pawn from queening. And that's pretty much it. If you bring a queen into the game, knight g6 check, of course, then picks up the queen, and on the next move you're gonna queen this pawn, and even if you could give a check, it doesn't matter. Even if you could somehow stop it, but it's not your move, then h3, h2, and of course there are simply too many pawns. Of course, this is evident, and after g2, Tan Zhongyi resigns, and another great victory for the champion, Zhu Wenjun. Which means she now takes a 2-point lead in the match going into Chongqing, and it will be very hard for Tan to get back into the match, but of course it's not impossible. She already showed that she can win. She started the match by winning. She had the lead, but then we had the retaliating game in round 3, and then also Zhu just won games 5 and 6, so absolutely incredible performance there by the world champion. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry for my sore throat. You know, what are you gonna do? It is as it is. I would like to thank Peter Van Dulst, Derek King, Charles Benjamin Flynn, Dan Schwartz, and Ilya Maltsev for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. continuing to check upon your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world, like the World Championship and the scrambled chess. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.